Let's see if I pressed all the correct buttons. Whoa, there we go. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, that's way too small. Well, no, that's actually probably good. Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. All right, well, we're going to get started in 5 minutes, so we'll see if anybody shows up. I'm not smart enough to know how to edit this off of the front end of the recording, so that's all right. Though, if you're just going to catch the beginning, we're going to start in 5 minutes with 2 hours of the Herbal Open Forum. And, uh-oh, it's yelling at me. So I'm not sure why, because I'm sitting just a few feet away from the internet connection. Yay, somebody's here. So let us know who you are and where you're from. If you got any questions, pop those into the chat. And we'll get started here in 4 minutes and counting. Sorry, I'm still playing with my screen here. Hey, Daniel Saab, what's up, man? I was thinking about you. I was like, man, I need to go to a different kava bar. I always go to the same two places. And I was like, I don't know where Daniel hangs out, which kava bar. So I didn't do any of them. Ah. Trying to branch out. Hey, Tammy, welcome. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. And so I'll do a little station identification once we get hopping. And I didn't think anybody was going to show up today. I was like, everybody's doing stuff for the holidays. Maybe you can use this as an excuse to escape from all the stuff. Man, I got a gang here. That's awesome. Hey, Stevie. Uh-oh. See that? The ghosts are throwing my bags around here. I did get your question. I got you. You're on the list there. Oh, see, I don't know that one. I'm going to have to check it out. That's really cool. We'll get started here in just a minute. If any of you folks have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. Oop, I do have a pen with me. And we're going to get started here in just a minute. Hopefully this thing writes. And don't have a ton of questions. I was going to use diet and all that. Hey, Pickles. I'm going to try to make it a theme of diet. I'm trying to be that whole theme thing. So give a little direction, although I didn't really advertise that. But it's the holidays and everybody's diet went to hell probably for the holidays. And that's okay. That's probably the biggest message I've got. So hang tight, y'all, and we'll get started here right at 6 o'clock, and I will babble endlessly until either my voice gives out or 8 o'clock, whichever happens first. I just spent the day with the chainsaw and everything else I could think of trying to recover the backyard here, still hacking it all back from the hurricane. So I think that's going to be a year-long struggle for me trying to make it all work again back there. But I think there may be a bobcat in my future of trying to redesign the backyard here some. Luckily for those of you who've been to the teaching gardens there at Tradition School of Herbal Studies, that garden did pretty good, except for the snakes seem to really be enjoying eating all the fish in the pond, which is kind of a pain. Sylvester. Oh, the Genema sylvestri. Okay, you threw me for a second there, Pickles. Huh, that's really interesting. Um, that's an odd statement, but that's going to give us something to talk about, Pickles. I'm going to just write sylvestri. All right. Oh, look at that. It's 6 o'clock. All right. We got people here. Howdy do. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So if you don't know it, I'm Bob Linde of the Tradition School of Herbal Studies and Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies. And I'm a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild, as well as an acupuncture physician. And my running joke is I am an herbalist by passion and an acupuncturist by license. And so I get to say all kinds of crazy stuff because I am an AP. So I get to say those fancy words, treat and diagnose stuff. And if this is your first time joining us, I've been doing this since actually COVID, mainly because of COVID, I was really missing connecting with our community and teaching out. So many things got canceled, conferences and all the fun stuff that I like to do. And so I started doing this. And then even when all of our restrictions got listed or lifted, um, well, I was like, you know what? I'm reaching a lot of people that I wouldn't normally have reached. And so I just kept doing it. So we do this the last Friday of every month. And it's an opportunity for you to ask questions. I will do my very best. And of course, that, oh, I don't have my cool little quote, but this does not constitute medical advice or me taking you on as a patient. Me just spouting off a little bit about what I know about herbs, diet, lifestyle, supplements. Who knows what kind of crazy stuff I might end up saying. But I'm actually super excited. I thought I was going to be talking to myself all night, that everybody's running around doing stuff for the holidays. So I am ecstatic that we've already got a great crowd on here. So let me do a little station identification as far as cool stuff that's coming up. If you don't know it, you can find out more about the school at traditionsherbschool.com, or for the clinical practice, or to schedule an appointment either for a student clinic or to see one of the great practitioners at the clinic, you can contact us through acuherbals.com, acuherbals.com. And there's lots of cool classes coming up in the not too distant future for the month of January. So if you're in the area, I mean, say anywhere in the area, I have a long stand. I think I've been doing it for 15 years or so. That I came up with the idea that, we all have these cool New Year's resolutions and all that kind of stuff. And one of my goals, like when I created kind of a mission statement for the clinic and for the school, education was at the forefront. It wasn't just about stabbing people with acupuncture needles or see how many herbs I can sell, but it was about teaching people to be well and connecting with their environment, because I really do think our time in nature is really important. And and so for so many people, nature is a scary thing. And sure, my students, I drag you all out into the woods and do all kinds of cool stuff. But the reality is, for my clients, they don't get an opportunity, and just for the general public. And so many people can't afford the services or don't have the time, they're inconvenient and so forth. And so I started that for those folks who didn't party too hardy on New Year's Eve, that on New Year's Day, I believe it's at 10 o'clock, that I do a free herb walk. And so sometimes it's a big crowd, and sometimes I'm really motivated and I'll do two, but I'm only doing one this year. But Forest Bluff Park, which is on 4th Street South, around 64th Avenue South. And so it's free. It's just kind of like parking wherever you can on the streets. You can park on any of the side streets there and just walk a couple blocks if there's not enough parking in the park. I am threatening to make a bucket of Wyusa for us all to try. And it is supposed to be cold that morning, so it'll be strong. And we'll go around and we'll look at the edible medicinal plants. So that's January 1st. And I hope I see you all there if you're free or didn't stay up too late. But of course, we've also got Gray teaching our Ayurvedic herbal series on Thursday. So next one is on January 9th, and it's going to be focusing on healthy skin and hair using Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurvedic herbs and techniques. Then there's June 16th, and I'm sure I should know something about this. I might even be teaching one of them, but I guess there's a 3-part series on TCM diagnostics. And so I think that's really appropriate. I believe Martina, one of the other great practitioners there at the clinic, is teaching that. And for my students, both my newbies and my oldies, I think it's really good to get that perspective from somebody else. Like, y'all mostly hear from me on all of this gibberish. You've got Ruthie helping student clinic. But to see how other people approach it. And I know Martina and I think very similarly. She interned with me for almost 2 years. And so just trying to get a simple thing. But for those of you who are either considering to go get Chinese herbs or Chinese acupuncture, or if you're just an herbalist who's like not familiar with the idea of diagnostics, I think it's really nice to start to see how this energetic system of that the liver isn't really the liver. And obviously, I talk about it a lot here on the open forum, but like, yeah, a little bit more intense just talking about that. And I know it's a three-part series. I might be teaching one of those. I'm not really sure, but we'll find out. And then Western Herbal 101, our series of stuff. We already did one for the year. That's the start of the Western Herb program, but it's also meant as a standalone class. And you hear me talk about this a lot. Is everybody used to know herbalism. It wasn't some weird, obscure thing off to the side. It's what every grandmother knew and passed on to their children. This idea that like we all, without any formal medical training whatsoever, we can go into a CVS and treat all of our day-to-day stuff fairly successfully. We can go get some Motrin, we can get some triple anti-B, we can get a Band-Aid, we can do things to help all of those normal things that everybody deals with. And so, what did we do before that CVS was on the corner? And so the 101 is really designed to do that. If you've taken a 101 course before, you new transplant to Florida or something, yeah, we cover the same plants like yarrow, chamomile, things like that. Certainly my own experience with those plants I always talk about. But so many of those plants don't grow here in Florida. And so I've really worked hard to incorporate our bioregional plants because that basic foundational grandmother's medicine is supposed to be walk out in the backyard, not something you planted, but something you picked because it's already there. The less we mow our yard, the more access to medicine that we've got. And so not only is it the start if you want to go on and learn way more cool stuff like diagnostics, get clinical practice, but that 101, I think pretty much like that should be required in middle school or something, that everybody gets some exposure to why do we like keep nature around? What are those plants here for? And how do we incorporate those things that we can find in Publix or in our backyard as medicine? So we've got a couple of those coming up, but the next one is January 18th and 19th. Sorry, I'm being ADD tonight. I haven't had dinner, so I'm a little hungry. So that, I did grab a snack real fast. And of course, our ongoing monthly Anatomy for the Herbalists by Trisha. And so this month it's on skin. Kind of goes along with Gray's stuff, so it's lots of skin stuff. So our foundation students, that's what they'll be covering. And then Ruthie is continuing with her mushroom medicine series. I have no idea what mushroom she's talking about, but it's always an exciting one. It's always, you get a little history, you get a little bit about its medicinal benefits, and she always makes something super cool. She is the master of making herbal food, medicine, you name it. And then January 30th, we've got the Business of Herbalism coming up, which is kind of, this is another one of the, I forget whether it's Thursday or Friday classes, but, we've got our weekend intensive of looking at the legal aspects and mission, vision, and values and business plan, all that cool stuff. But and this was some insight both from some of the students, but also from Trisha, who's, now gone through everything and helps run everything. But she was like, they need the motivation broken down into more, even though I give them the steps, that we're having this so that people who are like, no, I want to do it, but I need to be held accountable, that this class is going to be more about a review of the basics, but then like, all right, let's brainstorm, put this all together. I'm excited to see how that class goes. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be led by Trisha, and she's gone through it enough herself, and I may just show up just to throw in my 2 cents worth if I can. And I will say the general publication, I'm not sure if Trisha or anybody's put it out yet, but I believe the weekend of whatever that first weekend is in January is the vitamin mineral therapy class, I believe, for the Chinese students. And that is an open class. There's no prerequisites for that. So for anybody who is interested in getting some of that foundational vitamin minerals, where do we get it from foods? What's the right form of those supplements? What are they cofactors? Why do we put those together? What kind of things do we recommend those various nutritional supplements? So it's part of both the Western and the Chinese program. But I also, it's funny, it's something I grew up with. That was normal in the house, and started studying that way too young. I think I started studying that stuff when I was about 12 years old. I started learning vitamin mineral therapy and was probably a little supplement pusher from about the age of 14 or 15 on. And I know in that class I tell you all the ways to abuse and do all the wrong things. Um, I've also say put on your calendars that Herb Day is May 3rd, and so that's going to be at the office again. Like last year, we that was our first Herb Day that we'd ever had there at 6340 Central Avenue. And all I can say was like that space was made for Herb Day. It was absolutely amazing, and we're going to do all the same thing: great vendors, music, and boy, I tell you what, I continue to expand the list of weird things that I make for people to taste. And I was thinking about, see, it's a problem. When I get, so I've got 2 weeks off, I start thinking about way too many things and come up with devious plans that I'm completely insane. And so I've been thinking about how to incorporate bugs. And since our theme for this evening is about food, food therapies, and food as medicine kind of idea, as well as, and pickles are kind of like a parallel thing is so many of us go into the holidays or post holidays with our New Year's resolutions. We have the best intention. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to take my herbs. I'm going to do raw herbs. I'm going to spend time. Like we have this huge laundry list of, they're very practical, but sometimes overwhelming. Uh, those New Year's resolutions that we make with the best of intentions. And so often we fail by the time the second or third week of the month comes along. So one of the things I start scheming as soon as I'm left to my own devices and in my own mind to explore things, um, I start thinking of all the different ways I can do more stuff for the community and so forth. So I know my wild harebrained idea was to make some sort of bug related dish because any of you who've sat in my classes before, I frequently, and obviously not appropriate for anybody who's vegan, but we are one of the only cultures that don't eat bugs as a part of our normal diet. Chinese medicine, we use bugs as medicine, very effective, using things like cicada moltings for itchy skin issues. We use praying mantis cocoons for frequent urination from deficiency. There's like this whole slew of different things. We have centipedes and scorpions. We got all that weird stuff in Chinese. We expand that idea of what is an herb. And so I'm going to come up with some sort of a dish that will be medicinal, but also have as the main ingredient will actually have some bugs in it. So that will certainly be for the not faint of heart. So if you're just joining us, I'm going to end up focusing my babblement here in just a minute, but feel free to post any questions you've got. We'll add it to the queue of stuff that we've got going on. Oh, and I do want to mention, if you're not an active student doing anything interesting with us, not only do we have our Thursday and Friday night classes that are always exciting, uh, if you eat your surname. Oh, that's true. um, but we've also got a local chapter of the American Herbalist Guild here. And so we've got a new prez who's fired up about doing all kinds of cool things. They're going to be announcing their stuff. But just check. I know it's on Facebook. I'm sure they got other ways to contact them. The West Coast chapter of the American Herbalist Guild. I know they're on Facebook. I think they're on Instagram. I won't swear to that. I've kind of lost touch with all the various social media things. So, uh, um, all right, what did I forget? Oh, and also, again, if you're in the area, obviously, not only do we have a number of great acupuncturists and herbalists at the clinic that are there 6 days a week. Um, We've also got a student clinic. Our Monday night is our acupuncture interns from Dragon Rise's school in Sarasota. Um, we've got our Western students getting practice on Tuesday nights, and on Wednesday night is our Chinese herb students getting practice. And they're all supervised by either me or Ruthie, and they're phenomenal. And so when price is an issue, or if you're considering the program and you kind of want to get a taste for what's it look like to be a treating intern there, it's a great way to get your feet wet. But also, one of my graduates actually, who's a great acupuncture and herbalist in the community, um, Matt, he did it on his own, but I kind of helped prod him into starting up a free clinic in downtown St. Pete. So the Sunshine Center, which I'd have to look up the address, but Google Sunshine Center, you'll find it. On the first and third Fridays from 10:30 to 12. We do free community style acupuncture. It's just sitting in chairs. A little quick paperwork. There's no requirements. You don't have to be a senior to do it, even though it's at the senior center. It's upstairs. They usually have a sign there. Um, and it is open and free to anybody. If you're not a member of the Sunshine Center, they do ask that you check in downstairs at the booth and just say, hey, I hear there's some acu here, and they'll make you scribble something that says you promise not to sue the city. Um, but I will I will be there. I believe it's January 3rd is the first Friday of the month, so I'll be there with bells on. I think I'm suckering Martina into doing it with me, and for any of my senior students or for my graduates from Western or Chinese, we always need people to do ear seeds and magnets there. It's a great way to practice your tongue and pulse. We actually do a very quick on the fly intake with folks, so it's a great way to kind of learn first aid, get more tongues and pulses under your belt, and really helpful to have somebody there directing traffic as well as just helping us with all the paperwork. And we had Samaya there for, I want to say, the first couple of months, and she was loved by everybody there. Not only was she just sitting there chatting with people and explaining the situation, but they were all asking for the ear seeds and magnets. They loved everything that she provided for them there. So, all right, let's dive into stuff, man. Sorry, I babbled on a little bit more, but yeah, whatever. So I'll go ahead and start with one of the questions, even though I'm gonna jump back to diet pretty fast. So there was a question about ganglion cyst, and so pretty common, and it's funny, and it was like I have my opinion as to why do people get a ganglion cyst or cysts in general. Honestly, there's Baker cyst, there's ganglion cyst. Um, I had to do a quick Google on that. I was like, what does Western medicine think that a ganglion cyst comes from? And they were like, meh, there's a couple possible ideas, but they didn't really have a great example, a great cause for it. Baker cysts are usually repetitive motion. Ganglion cysts are like, we're not really sure, but they're all kind of the same thing. And this was one of the questions that somebody sent in. And it was really interesting because they said that they had gone to see, I believe, an orthopedic, and that he took an X-ray, which actually doesn't work to identify a cyst. So it would have ruled out potential other things, perhaps, but ultimately, the only appropriate thing would be, and I could like, they're not generally dangerous, but ruling out scarier things. Or if it was close to a nerve or something like that. Hey, Susan. Wow. Hey, we're international today. We got you all the way in Mexico. Um, and thank you for that video, by the way. But ultrasound is kind of the bare minimum for diagnosing a ganglion cyst. Certainly just palpation, they can usually guess at it pretty correctly, but always nice to rule things out, make sure it's not wrapping around a nerve bundle or something like that, which can be a problem. And then if they really wanted to get a more precise and accurate imaging, obviously an MRI, but really not necessary if the ultrasound comes out clear. And my personal belief is that it's kind of like an internal blister. And whether it's a Baker cyst or a ganglion cyst, there's subtle differences, but nothing worth speaking of. And it's the same way that if something was rubbing on our heel because we had new shoes or something like that, we would form a blister. It would be a little fluid-filled thing that our body was saying, oh, it's hot and there's a little bit of friction in there, that it would cause that irritation. And so that's our body's natural response to an irritant. So in our body, our muscles and tendons get out of balance, or as Kristen thought was maybe like she was doing a little bit more physical labor, maybe had a hammer or saw or something, and something got a little out of whack. And she got a very painful, we think, a ganglion cyst. Actually, it could have been a Baker cyst, depending on where it was. It wasn't in an odd place. So maybe Baker cyst, maybe a ganglion cyst. Who cares? It's a cyst. Um, and I have seen them come up. It could have been a internal blood blister or a blood vessel. Those are usually much more painful. Whereas the other cysts are generally not painful. They're irritating, they can impede movement and things like that, but usually not a lot of pain associated with those. So um, the the medical treatment for those is ignore it. They can aspirate it, they can stick a needle in, suck the juice out, then comes right back. But it's an option. They can surgically remove it, but they usually come back. And There was a favorite one that I was told once was they would use the Jesus technique where they would take a Bible and just pop it. I don't recommend that. That would be horribly painful and it would still come back. But herbs can be helpful. Oddly enough, I always say for a case of a baker cyst, it's from bakers kneading dough that they would get cysts in their wrists a lot of times or in their palms. And what I always say is like, what were you doing that created an imbalance, a physical structural imbalance in the body? And so maybe massage, maybe acupuncture may help with that. We see a lot of cysts in the backs of the knee, where I find there's actually muscle imbalance. That one muscle is a little atrophied from a lack of diversity in exercise. And so it kind of throws things a little out of whack. So there might even be like physical therapy or something like that may help to just create some balance in all of it. Even chiropractic care, like there might be some wrist bones or some elbow, the bones, radius and ulnar might be a little bit of out of whack. So even a chiropractor might be helpful for something like that. Um, uh, Doc said, "Don't pound the Bible, huh?" Yeah, I don't recommend that one either. That would sting. Um, the I don't know. Like, I guess that was a thing because everybody tells that same stupid joke, and I haven't heard of anybody who's actually used that technique. So, from an herbal perspective, there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and she wrote down some actually really good suggestions. Um, and I have my own personal opinions. And one, it's funny, when I was younger and first getting into the realm of herbalism and things like that, castor oil was all the rage. And so that kind of goes back to Edgar Casey. That was his jam. He really created the whole castor packs and things like that. And it's not the only person. It's been used in traditions wherever it grows. Um, but I love castor oil, and it's I have a very specific reason I use it. It's for hard, lumpy things, and if you use that criteria, like castor oil topically probably isn't going to hurt anything other than maybe an acute skin infection. Like if you had a yeast infection on your skin or a bacterial infection on your skin, you wouldn't want to put oil on it just because oil is going to trap in the bacteria, the yeast, and actually probably make it worse. So, um, but whenever I see hard, lumpy things in the body, and uh, then it's helpful, and that could be anything from scary tumor things to I find when you've got trigger finger, oftentimes just at the base of the pad, there's a hard, lumpy thing there. Um, the trick with castor, though, is ideally, in a perfect world, I'd say applying it twice a day. Just a little dab will do you. You don't have to like pour a gallon on there. And so one bottle would last 6 months or so. But it seems to soften the edges and sort of dissipate things. That could be added to, and you had a great suggestion in the email that you sent me. Chickweed was a great idea. I would say chickweed and cleavers together topically and also internally can be really helpful. Um, I might say gotu kola could be used topically or internally. Gotu kola is great for connective tissue issues. Um, Other things like you had things like poke in there. not wrong. Actually, I always think of that as more lymphatic. And so this isn't really lymphatic, but it is a congestion of fluid. So, like, meh, it's not a bad idea. And so, for something like this, I really like topical. Never wrong to do chickweed and cleavers. Like, that's a vegetable as far as I'm concerned. Uh, but just making a poultice out of that. So just taking a little bit of that oil, mashing it up with your herbs until you get kind of like fresh or dried, but grind them up into like a little green ball of fun. And to put that on that cyst, maybe apply a band-aid over it and keeping it on there as much as possible can really make a dramatic difference in breaking that up. And so the castor will do it probably on its own, but you'll speed up that process. And I would say just because it kind of goes away, kind of dissipates, don't assume it's gone. Keep going for an additional month at least with the pure castor oil. You could probably slack off on the herbs a little bit. But remember, look to your root cause. Like certainly it could be, where you had it, like I think it was like right here on your hand. It was either on the finger or just right here on the palm. And that could be a chainsaw, a hammer, a saw that was getting some extra workout from just dealing with hurricane stuff. So trying to A, stop doing that, but B, that means the wrist could be, oh, you got all your cool wrist bones in here, those get out of whack. It could be coming from the elbow, and yeah, those are the most likely things, honestly. So getting an acupuncture chiropractor to play with that a little bit as well can be really helpful. And yeah, it's like anything lumpy in the body, it's super appropriate to use it. It's not I don't use it as a standalone, but it's just a win. And I don't like it internally. Castor oil, even though castor, the plant, and the beans specifically are contain the most deadly poison, ricin. Secret spy, CIA kind of thing that they off people with. Yes, shovel. There you go. Is certainly, oh, that's a great question. So the oil itself, so cold pressed, organic, blah, 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 all the things we always look for in an oil, um, won't kill you per se, but it may make you wish, it will make you vomit and have diarrhea. It's midwives, I don't use it, but midwives, it's very normal to give, they can't start labor, they'll give them castor. Moms gave it to children for a long time. Keeping dogs, like nobody wants their dog puking or pooping, and I'm not sure about processing for dogs, but it is certainly harder to get dogs to not lick it off. I would probably, dogs have lots of lumpy things, so this is a great question, Stevie. um, I generally won't use castor oil if they can reach it. So if it's like from their shoulders up, you can go ahead and put some castor on there. Probably won't get it. If it's in a place where, we can't have a dog wearing the cone of shame for 6 months as we try to address the lumpy thing on a dog. So I'm probably going to use something different. If it was just a fatty lipoma, which is the most common thing, I would probably look at the chickweed and cleavers. That's super safe for dogs. Regularly use it for dogs. I will say, not not all fatty lipomas are because of food, but it's frequently because of digestion and things like that. Um, yeah, that's a long time to keep that cone on a puppy. Um, so yeah, you can still get there without it. Just going to take a little bit longer, and again, looking for the cause. And that's a lovely segue into what I kind of wanted to focus on a little bit for the evening, at least to get things going. And I will say, if you're just joining us, feel free to post any questions as we go, and I will be ADD as hell and bounce back and forth into what we're talking about. But I wanted to talk about diet, and I may delve into a few other things off of that because the reality as herbalists, yeah, we love giving people herbs and infusions and decoctions and pills and potions and all of that. Like, yay, that's what we do for a living. That's what we go to school for, to learn all this cool stuff. But the reality is, nothing is as powerful as the food we eat. And so um, it's the thing that we do 2 to 4 times a day, depending on how much snacking you do, maybe more. And it will make or break us. And it is one of those things where there's a lot of shame and guilt around food of what's a bad food or a good food. Although we have diagnosable eating disorders like bulimia and anorexia, I would say we all have a little bit of trauma around food, but we also have a lot of joy. And so, I can still smell my grandmother's cooking, especially around Thanksgiving. We usually went to Cincinnati to visit my grandparents then. And that is a smell that I'll never forget. We have our favorite dishes. It's mom's special or dad's special or the barbecue that gets all of our juices going and so forth. And so um, I will not sit here and tell you that there is anything that is an actual superfood. The superfood is the food that you need because you're not eating it, and it's making sure that you have a nutritional deficiency. But I would also say that the variety of the easy way to I don't know that, or do you have a Latin name for that, Susan? Um, but eating a variety of colors, um, and I would Google it, but I can't do it while I'm talking. I'm not that good at being ADD. Um, Eating the variety of colors, the variety of proteins, the variety of oils, fats, I should say, um, but also, and this goes a little bit into the Chinese, but we find this in every culture. I would say a variety of the flavors. Our American culture focusing on that sweet and salty, and we lack acrid, spicy, bitter, sour. All of those have a role in what we do. And and so this idea of what's the right food for somebody, I would say, um, oh boy, that's a question. Leaky gut. All right. I sure will. That's a great question. Um, and let me finish my thought and I'll delve into that. Porosa. That's not a Latin name. Find the Latin name for me. Genus and species. Uh, there we go. That's a genus and species. I still don't know what it is, but it looks more familiar. I'm gonna have to look that up or find a picture of it, Susan. Um, so there's a couple of funny concepts, and and this is gonna pickles. This goes back to you're like, how do I lose 10 pounds? Because I haven't seen you in a while, but like you're not. I don't think of you as overweight, and I believe you're generally a very healthy eater. That you grow a lot of your own vegetables and foods and eating out of the garden. So all kinds of cool stuff that you're doing. Potentially, maybe exercise is something that needs to be incorporated, but gardening I think is great exercise. Um, but one of the concepts that is not, we always talk about it in reference to Chinese medicine, but I'm going to say in most traditional cultures, this is true. Um, and the idea of cooking our food is good. And especially if we don't feel well, if we're not, oh, sorry, cannot take an SBA call right now. So the idea of cooking our food being an important part of our ability to assimilate, and I'm going to actually come bring that back around to leaky gut here in about 10 minutes, promise. Uh, but it is that idea of, if we're not feeling well, would your mom bring you a soup or a salad? And so I would think that most of us say, like, no, a hot soup feels good when I don't feel good. Perfect, Susan. Um, and and it also makes a lot of our minerals available to us. It makes it easier for us to digest, um, certainly if it's cold out and so forth. And so the Chinese medicine expounds on this idea. Cooking is what allowed us to actually create towns and villages, right? Before we were just hunter gatherers, before we invented fire and all those things that are super important, we were getting food poisoning, things like that. We still get food poisoning. And if you look at like just the news, like we get food poisoning from things that are undercooked or raw, right? We see it in our things like bean sprouts, the we see cantaloupe and spinach. These are all things that have had recalls because there's poop on it, and people get really sick. So cooking our food makes it safer to eat, easier to assimilate, and certainly some cooking will slowly decline certain nutrients, but it doesn't destroy the nutrients. And so nutrients all degrade. The second we pull a vegetable out of the garden, nutrients start to degrade slowly. Heating will degrade some and release some so that we can absorb them better. So this idea of eating cooked foods is a nice simple one, like eat more cooked foods, only a little bit of raw food, a little bit's fine. And cooking isn't limited to boiling the crap out of it. It can be roasted in the oven, it can be a stir fry where it's still crunchy in the center. It can be fermentation as a type of cooking. It can be a vinegar. That's a type of, we're using an acid to break down the fibers and the nutrients to make them more absorbable. Um, but the Chinese kind of take it a little bit further. It can be food combining in a way, and not too far down the rabbit hole because food combining can get really stressful as well. But the idea that, and I always use this is a bad joke I tell in class, but it's kind of true. You go to the Thai lunch special and they bring you a pot of tea and you're drinking this warm drink, and so we're only supposed to sip enough water to get our food down, but it should be a warm drink or room temperature. Uh, and they bring out a tiny little bowl of soup, right? And so we always, when we talk about digestion, we say the stomach and our digestion is like a bowl of soup that has to be kept at the right temperature. So out comes this nice small soup that we enjoy that. And we're like, oh, yum. And the main course comes out, and forget the fried appetizer. That's an American thing and not very good for you. But then we come back with a stir fry or curry with a little bit of rice, and we eat that up, super yum. And the running joke is after we eat Asian food, we're hungry 2 hours later because our body broke down those foods so quickly and assimilated those nutrients that we didn't feel sleepy after that meal. We maintain hunger that comes back very quickly, which is okay. That means, like, no, we needed those nutrients. Um, and the counterpoint to that is this idea of like, and we'll go with holiday dinners. Like, what happens, if we went out to the restaurant, although the only thing open for most of the holidays is Chinese food, but that's another bad joke. But, we're there, we get a big old glass of ice water packed full of ice, and we're sipping that, and out comes our salad right out of the refrigerator. I got to stop calling it an ice box. Nobody knows what that is anymore. But out comes our salad. We pour our cold, creamy dressing all over it. Yum. And we eat that, and then the T-bone steak comes, the steak's hanging over the sides of the plate with a mound of mashed potatoes, yop, 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 yop. And it's like now we're like, oh, I don't know if I got room for dessert. Now comes the apple pie with ice cream on it. We've got to have apple pie with a la mode on it because it's American food, right? And what happens? We go sit on the couch. We undo the top button. We're gonna watch the football game, and you're like, everybody's falling asleep because there's so much energy that's going into digestion. We've overfilled this bowl of soup that we call our stomach, and we literally get exhausted instead of energized from our food. And so there's a very simple thing. A lot of times when somebody just needs to, they're exercising, they're eating generally healthy, and they're like, why can't I lose this last 5 or 10 pounds? And they're actually killing their metabolism because they're being more and more restrictive in their diet. And the body sometimes will see that as like, I'm in a famine. I got to hold on to whatever nutrients I've got. And we literally slow our body's processing and metabolism down a little bit. So I would say for a fun experiment is to, for 2 weeks, only cooked foods and room temperature or warm drinks, and then go out and eat and get a big old glass of iced tea or something, and it will hurt. It will literally cause pain in your stomach. And so an easy way to lose that 5 or 10 pounds is frequently lose cold drinks, and it's wintertime. You don't need cold drinks. Make sure they're warm or room temperature. Um, and then just focus on soups, stews, stir fries, um, and try to eliminate cold stuff and see if that helps. But I'm going to switch this a little bit. I'm going to come back to this idea of food because that was one of just the big concepts I wanted to get out there. And if you're just joining us, feel free to throw any questions in there. Take any questions and let us know who you are, where you're from. If you haven't jumped on here before, it's always cool to see where people are from. So, leaky gut, because this has a huge role um, in this concept of nutrition, diet, in how that affects our health. And so, leaky gut was something that, I don't know, I think that phrase has been around for a good, it's always embarrassing, it's got to be 60 years now. Oh my God. Certainly, we started to hear about it in the 60s, and it became very commonplace to see in the 90s until today. And the medical community generally made fun of the mainstream medical community, kind of made fun of us for that. And the reality is, it's kind of a slang term. And so we switched over to gut permeability issues, and now it's a more accepted term. Not everybody is on board with it. But this idea that when we look at the intestines, and it is a interesting structure, it's like multi-level levels of specialized tissue on there, and then there's these little villi, which they're microscopic, but they kind of like this little wavy lines. And there's blood vessels, like there's a little venial and arterial that goes up there. So little single cell blood vessels, and these cells that are right on the edge, and that's where these nutrients that are broken down into very small molecules are supposed to be absorbed into the bloodstream and carried off for us to do good stuff in the liver and so forth. And on top of these little villi, these little squiggly lines, we have a mucosal lining, and in that mucosal lining are where all the good bacteria live. And in a perfect world, we have this very diverse variety of different good bacteria in there, and all bacteria are good in the right balance. Oh, we're going to rattle off all the good shit on that. And the problem is things like our diet, our exposure to certain prescription medications, certain over the counter medications, certain chemicals in our environment can all disrupt those good bacteria or the mucosal lining there. The other things that will mess it up: long-term stress, low stomach acid. I know anybody who's been on here before have heard me rant about the stomach acid. But we'll talk about a couple of things that are really common issues for healthy gut lining in general. And some of this gets back to energetics, the idea of our constitution. And so if you're like super dry, you've been like, you're thin, wiry, dry skin pretty much your whole life, whatever your skin is on the outside is kind of a reflection of what's going on inside the intestines. And so that mucosal lining, think of it as a slimy coating that's supposed to be in there, right? Like the inside of your nose, the vaginal lining, all of those are a certain amount of moisture that's there to be healthy. And so if you're always like, oh my God, my nose is so dry, getting bloody noses and things like that for no particular reason, and it's not that you're not drinking enough water, your gut probably is a little dry and rough. And so it's hard for those bacteria to thrive in that environment. So using moistening herbs, like you're like, nope, this is the way I've been. I was born this way. Gonna stay this way. Then we can just use moistening herbs like marshmallow. Hibiscus are great moistening, any of our yin tonics that we use in Chinese medicine are all within that realm of stuff. But more commonly, it's like I don't know of many adults who have never had a round of antibiotics. And so um, using antibiotics occasionally will save your life if it's actually necessary, but it's not that selective. So it's a little selective, but not selective enough because it kills off the gut bacteria as well as the bad bacteria that we're not supposed to have. And so if it doesn't come back effectively, or if you've been like on a lot of antibiotics, like you were the kid who was sick all the time, or one of the things that makes me horrified is for acne as a kid, even if it's cystic acne, certainly bad and all that. But I see so many people who've been put on daily antibiotics for 1 to 3 years, and it usually doesn't work. They have no healthy gut. I guarantee they have gut permeability, leaky gut issues, like just horrifying. Um, Also, steroids, long term use of steroids like prednisone. Like, oh, I've got an autoimmune disorder, I've got to take prednisone, a round of prednisones a couple of times a year. That tends to dry things out. Again, messes with the gut, and the gut is part of the immune system. And the role of prednisone is to suppress your body's natural response to inflammation, suppress the immune system, and stop that immune response. Um, we also see oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah, you gotta always pardon me a little ADD because I'm like, yeah, questions. Let me just randomly make stuff up as I go through this and pulling it out of thin air. There's nobody in the background with cue cards telling me what to say. Um, but anybody who was a C-section, if your doctor didn't take a vaginal swab and swab the baby's mouth, that initial passage through the birth canal is the initial inoculation of every child that had a natural birth. That's the start of their immune system. And so if they didn't, and it is not a standard practice, like you would have to request that or have a very astute doc, midwife, or somebody there who was smart enough to go whoop and boop, wipe it in the baby's mouth. That's all you need to do. But that doesn't happen often enough, so we see that has a role in not getting the good bacteria in there to keep that healthy gut biome. Long-term use of NSAIDs like Motrin. So a lot of women with really painful menses are popping Motrin once a month. They're popping those for 5 or 6 days. That seems to show that it's having a detrimental effect on the gut lining. Tylenol, same thing. Uh, I'm not sure on aspirin, but I just assume it does. um, but also the long-term use of acid reflux meds. And so your H2 and your PPIs, anything that reduces your stomach acid, because your stomach's supposed to be really acidic, right? It's supposed to be a pH of 1, maybe 2. It breaks down meat, it sterilizes your food, all that good stuff. And then the pH changes. And so you get different bacteria along the bowels based on what the pH is and what the role is. Um, so minimizing our exposure to prescription medications that have those long-term effects on our gut, destroying the gut biome, ultimately long-term will destroy the mucosal lining, which makes for this kind of, I always say, it's like if this is what your gut's supposed to look like, now there's like a little bit too big a gap. And so the food particles are passing through into the bloodstream a little too soon, and it causes inflammation. Then your gut becomes inflamed, but also then your body will start to recognize certain foods as invaders, right? Because they're not broken down properly. So the body goes, ooh, what's this dangerous thing that's showing up in the body? We have to create an immune response, an antibody for that, that says, ooh, now gluten is toxic. Or my very sad statement, corn, something that I love popcorn. I like all things corn. What's not to love about corn? Except that it's all GMO. But now I find I'm reactive to corn because, and it's funny, and my students all know this. Um, the it's kind of a mean thing to do, but we can go and spend $1,000 for a very fancy food sensitivity test, which is different from an allergy test. Um, and they're usually pretty accurate. They've gotten better and better about those over the years. But I could also say, what's your favorite food? That's the one you're sensitive to. That kind of sucks because it's your favorite food, right? So I love corn. It was my late night snack was popcorn. I love popcorn, and it never was an issue. And all of a sudden, just in the last 5 or 6 years, I'm like, I think it's the popcorn and nuts. I love to have like walnuts and pecans and macadamias. That was again, I thought a healthier late night snack. It's better than some of the other options I could have gone towards, and now I find that those are inflammatory too for me as well. And yay, I have leaky gut issues. It's better than it used to be. Um, so the other thing that really, I said low stomach acid, acid reflux meds, and certainly like scary strong things like chemotherapy, immunosuppressants. Those are going to have a negative effect on the gut, and those, you may have to do those. But things that we can have some level of impact on. And Kristen, it's kind of what you said. The glyphosates. There is growing mounds of evidence. So glyphosates is your Roundup and things like that are used on so many of our mainstream foods in order to um, be able to grow more crops, especially things like corn and wheat, are Roundup ready so that they can spray massive amounts of stuff on there. So a lot of our our herbicides, insecticides, all those things that we put on our food, unfortunately, um, definitely seem to break down all kinds of stuff: nerve function, hormone, endocrine system, uh, all kinds of yucky stuff. But the gut is, without a doubt, a piece of that. And for any of you who've been reading or listening to the radio, reading more stuff, we're starting to hear more and more about a lot of these forever chemicals and how those are acting as endocrine disruptors in the body. And those also, along with all the other crappy cancer-related those do seem to have a cumulative effect on the gut. And so, we all need to live in a bubble, except that's made out of plastic. And of course, that is full of all kinds of toxic chemicals. So that would be a bad choice, too. I, the trick is not so much like live in fear of your environment, live in fear of your food. And I'm going to bring it all back to food. See that? Um, hey, uh, I'm sorry. No, Washington's awesome, actually. Uh, Um, so the trick is twofold: minimizing our exposure to stuff, um, and the other part is making sure our body is as healthy as it can be. Because although some of those for like we're gonna be exposed to chemicals, like we've been dropping atomic bombs for who knows how many years, and for so long was above ground, and we've been dumping plastics and like yuck, right? We're not going to fix that anytime soon, right? That's not going to be cured this week. But our body can handle some level of toxins. And so that's the job of your liver. And I would say somewhat your kidney and your intestines, right? You poop out things. And so if we can ensure that our body's detoxification stuff is working properly, i.e., elimination, and a healthy liver, um, that can have a real role in our ability to handle the toxic load that we're exposed to. And then if we minimize that exposure, then we're doing pretty good. And I always joke, some of you know that I was in Desert Storm, and man, you want to talk like I was. It's so funny. I hadn't heard from a lot of the people I was there with in my platoon, and we were up on the front lines, and we were detecting chemical weapons and all kinds of creepy stuff, and depleted uranium, and the PB pills and were burning buckets of poop. That's a different story. Um, they were spraying gasoline, burning oil wells. I don't know, a little bit of exposure. Every vaccine you could possibly imagine, um, and was very sick from desert storm syndrome, whatever the heck that is, and so I was like, hey, I should see, like, maybe I'm full of uranium. I don't know. Do I glow in the dark? So I was in the office. I got an account with Great Smoky Labs. They no longer exist. I changed the name. I got bought out or something, and sent out some hair mineral analysis. I was like, oh, that'll really show some of that cumulative toxins, man, and see if I need to do some craziness. And some of my staff was like, hey, we want to do it too. And so there's like a special rate for folks who are in the office and so forth. So we all sent it off. And there was a 25-year-old who was working her front desk at the time. She came back toxic as hell. Like, you name a toxin, she had it in her. And I came back pretty clean. And she did enjoy herself. Life was a lot of fun for her, and she may have indulged in a few substances. But the reality was, I think the difference was my ability to process things, and I was taking a lot of herbs and supplements and things like that because I felt very toxic at the time. I was dealing with gut permeability issues or leaky gut, lots of digestive issues. And so I think a lot of it has to do with that. How do we handle the load of toxins that are there? How do we do our very best to either heal our gut, leaky gut? How do we maintain a healthy gut biome? Those are the good bacteria stuff. And what are we doing to minimize our exposure to stuff? And so, watch, I'm going to bring this back to the diet. Eating a variety of foods minimizes our risk of creating antibodies against the foods. And so eating different colors, eating all the different foods, spices, all the proteins. So even if you're vegan, don't just eat one or two proteins, eat all the proteins. And that will minimize your body creating this inflammatory response. Our, our, our gut biome, it is like probiotics. It's all about the probiotics. I will say yes. But there's a million different types of probiotics you can buy out there. Some are for vaginal health, some are for skin health, some are just a million, some are for constipation, some for diarrhea. Take your choice. And what I always say, it's like, change your brand frequently. And so, yes, we try to take a more focused approach. You're like, oh, I just took a round of antibiotics, or I've got this gut issue, I've got irritable bowel syndrome, whatever. And so start with the appropriate one. And then I would say, like, every 2 or 3 bottles, get a different one. Ideally, a different brand. And there are so many good companies out there. And there's arguments of like, oh, they're all dead, or you only can buy. It's like, it's all kind of BS, honestly. The research shows that even the dead ones work pretty good. Uh, Y'all are hilarious. So changing that up to create, just like we talked about the diversity in food, we want diversity in our gut biome. Um, the other thing, everybody is like, you can buy some really expensive that's got prebiotics and it's FOS and all this good stuff, and it's all good. Um, but what we forget about is the foundation for that mucosal lining, for a healthy, gut. And we always think about the earth element in Chinese medicine is your digestive system. And if we were planting seeds, we want really rich soil, right? That it's not too wet, not too dry. We want it to, like, not be thick mud that clumps together. We need oxygenation. We need all this good stuff. So your gut lining needs that too. It needs compost. We call it fiber. Fiber, the indigestible fiber in particular, is the prebiotic that is necessary for a healthy gut. And as a culture, because we have so much microwaved goodness and we tend to eat highly processed foods, the biggest thing it lacks is fiber. Eat your veggies, and those can be cooked. Juicing, you're throwing away the fiber. I'm not a big fan of juicing. Not only is it cold energetically, it literally removes the fiber. So making sure that you are eating actual vegetables. If you're like, but I hate vegetables, buy a fiber supplement. There are vegetable based, so you can get the vegetable greens drinks, and those still have fiber in them. So fiber, 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 fiber. Um, Mushroom coffee. I have opinions. Um, and if anybody remembers Shauna's name of her coffee substitute, throw it into the chat there. Um, so, other things that we can do, obviously, making sure that you have healthy pH in your stomach, i.e., stop trying to alkalize your stomach. You're literally putting your life at risk. Um, Fermented foods. Um, fermented foods are an interesting thing. Um, a little bit of fermented food is good. Kombucha is, I'm finding, not that good for people. Even if you make your own, the the dosage of kombucha is like a tablespoon, and we're throwing back bottles of it. So too much of a good thing is too much, right? And so a little bit of fermented food should be on your plate. Um, and I would say, and all the different fermented foods, so sauerkraut, kefir, kvass, all, like they're all great. So a little bit of those should be like a daily dose, just like you might take a probiotic pill. And I will say, once your gut is trashed because of long-term antibiotics, steroid use, take your choice, you need a probiotic because you've taken a drug to create a drug-like action. Now you need a supplement to repair that action. Kombucha, or excuse me, the fermented foods are better for health maintenance. And that's just a couple of bites once a day into your food. Um, the other thing, and it's, yes, filtered water, uh, natural clothing, cotton, staying away from synthetic stuff as much as you can. Air fresheners are so freaking toxic. Please don't use dryer sheets. Please don't use the spray air freshener stuff. The plug-in crap will literally cause cancer. I cannot believe those are legal to sell in the United States. Scented candles frequently are loaded with uh, toxic endocrine disruptors, will also mess up your gut. Um, some of the perfumes, colognes, and makeups are some endocrine disrupting yuckiness. Uh, oh God, there was my personal pet peeve, um, receipts. Like you go to the grocery store, here's your receipt. It's like, get that chemical bomb away from me. So many people are like taking it, putting it in their pocket, then grabbing a sandwich, and they literally have all these horrible gut lining endocrine disruptor things. I was like, thank you, no, I don't want those things. So really looking at some of those smelly cleaning products, all of those things that are fresh, whatever scent, they are not your friend. Um, yeah, so prebiotic foods are just things high in insoluble fiber. Inulin is just an insoluble fiber that comes in burdock, dandelion, chicory. It's like whatever. It's like just eat your veggies. That's all you need to do. That's the nice thing. It's like uh, some incense, Daniel. Yeah, I love me some incense, but if it is putting smoke into the house and it's scented smoke, but so many, like the crappy stuff, what is it, Bed Bath and Beyond. I have to hold my breath going by those stores. I will not go in them because I will be sick for 2 days. I definitely have some chemical sensitivities. It's not as bad as it used to be, because I'm more aware of those things that will mess things up, so I avoid them at all costs. Um, Soy candles, they can be a mess too. If they're scented, generally I'm going to say no. The scented stuff is just evil. um, It's so funny. You want that fresh pine scent? Go grab some pine needles and throw them in a pot of warm water, and your house will smell amazing. Um, the scented stuff is usually just messing something up. It's bad for animals. It's bad for humans. Uh, Sorry, I'm just pissing everybody off now, huh? uh, it's funny. It's a lot of work to find a laundry detergent that isn't scented. I won't use deodorant. It's just there's too many things in there. It's doing a very unnatural process to your body. I'd rather just shower. Unscented soaps, like all of those things, are with synthetic stinky things that are not your friend. Sorry, I just like ruined every. Who asked that question, it just opened up a whole can of worms. Um, I will say leaky gut. Oh, and disruptors to gut lining, all the toxic crap. Yes, that. Um, this gets back to diet without a doubt. Um, Variety, we said that, but when we look at the liver's function in its role, I'm not a big fan of the word detoxification, but there's a two-stage detoxification process that the liver does, and it's not really detoxification so much as it breaks down stuff, and some of that is utilized in the body as nutrients, and some of it is eliminated as man, they really want to talk to me bad. Um, uh, and some of it's eliminated as waste product, urine, poop, um, sweat a little bit, and so there are so many building blocks, and a lot of supplements are sold for that. And if you're hearing about like um, leaky gut, and a lot of the functional medicine docs, chiropractors, acupuncturists, all of us, we talk about methylation, and so methylation is our ability to methylate B12 or break down B12, and that powers our body's mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. That is part of breaking down substances. And um, so making sure, at this point, I just assume everybody's got a methylation issue of some sort. Um, and so that's just making sure that we're getting adequate amount, and I'm going to generically say B vitamins. It's not just B12. It's all the B vitamins are important. All the nutrients are important, but B12 seems to be this key one. If you are vegan, please take a B complex supplement daily. If you have any inflammatory bowel disease, and that could be you're got acid reflux from any cause, if you're on acid reflux meds, please take a B complex. If you have IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, anything gutty, please take a B complex. And then get your B levels tested. And I'm going to type this one into the chat. So we want a serum B12, but you also want an MMA test. And I'm not going to pretend to know how to spell methylmalonic acid, but the comparison of those two tests will tell you how you're utilizing your B12. The scale for B12 in Western medicine is stupid. Sorry, I have opinions. I think it's like under 200, you're actually deficient. You're probably hospitalized if you're under 200. Um, and the top end, depending on the scale, sometimes it's like 11 or 1200, sometimes it's 900. I would rather you too high than too low. My personal opinion is if you're under 500, you are horribly deficient and you are not processing or absorbing your B12 properly. So most people, it's our B vitamins are stress vitamins. There's so many important roles in our B vitamins in all, like we always talk about methylation. So there's like the citric acid, there's the water cycle. There's like a bazillion. I can't even think of them all. Phospholipid, blah, blah, blah. There's so many different ones in there. So really taking a look at like you can test some nutrients, but the B vitamins, most of us need a little extra. Um, and if you're too high and yet you're still exhausted, get that MMA test because that'll tell you whether you're utilizing it. So the B12, the normal B12 test, just shows what's in your blood. It doesn't show whether your body's utilizing it appropriately. So the methylmalonic acid, yeah, and so exactly. If you've got the motherfucker gene, MTHFR, sorry if you see that in the chat, we all call it that. I don't even remember what it stands for anymore. And you can have, I think now they're up to 3 different genes that can be turned on or off with all of that. Yeah, just taking a B. I always say make sure it's a B complex. They're cofactors for each other, so they do work better together. Um, just the B12 is fine, but you're really missing out on some of the real benefits of all the different B vitamins. Oh, I didn't, you know what I didn't say? Like pretty much any medication depletes some of the B vitamins, B12 being very common. Anybody who drinks alcohol on somewhat of a regular basis specifically is likely to have leaky gut issues, but needs B complex. But alcohol, tis the season, um, uh, depletes basically all of them, but B1 in particular, B12, B6 is depleted by alcohol. So make sure that if you're like, no, alcohol's bad for you, it's a poison. Uh, but like, if you're gonna go out drinking for the holidays, especially New Year's Eve coming up and all that stupidness, pop a B complex before you go out for the night. It will slow the pain and damage that you are doing to your body. Vitamin C is also really appropriate. Not only is it good because of your exposure to germies if you're out partying somewhere and everybody's getting a hug at midnight, um, but the reality is there's a lot of sugar. So there's sugar alcohols plus the mixers and all your drinks and so forth. So vitamin C is very helpful for reducing the inflammation associated with elevated blood sugar. The Linus Pauling people actually think that diabetes is like vitamin C deficiency. It's a version of scurvy, if you will. They've had really good success in helping minimize the damage of diabetes with very high dose vitamin C. I don't really buy into that, but I think it has a role in all of that. And it's certainly inflammatory damage from high blood sugar is an issue. Um, yeah, that's all I can think of. So if you're partying on New Year's Eve, B complex, vitamin C. Um, I missed my station identification. So we're gonna talk more here in a second. But for anybody who missed my opening spiel, I'm Bob Linde. I'm a registered herbalist and acupuncture physician here in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida. And I'm the director of the Tradition School of Herbal Studies. You can find out more about that at traditionsherbschool.com, as well as the clinical practice, acupuncture and herbal therapies. You can find out more at acuherbals, acuherbals.com. And we've got both a 2-year Western program, all the way from beginner to clinician, as well as a 2-year clinical Chinese herbal program, same from beginner to clinician. And lots of cool classes for all the people who don't want to be a clinical herbalist, which I don't know why you wouldn't want to be a clinical herbalist. So January 1st, for those of you in the area, I always do a free herb walk at Forest Bluff Park at 10 a.m. You can sign up online or just show up. It'll be cold. It's at 10 o'clock and it's going to be chilly, maybe a little foggy. I plan to make some Wayusa so that I can keep us warm, and that's Ilex Wayusa, which is the national drink of Ecuador. It is caffeinated, but it's also super yummy. I will be boiling it for 2 days prior to it. It'll still taste good. Uh, Thank you. The herb walk, and then January 9th. So we have like our Thursday and Friday night series is more for folks who are just like, I just want to put my toe in the water, or just sounds interesting, you want to check it out. So January 9th is our Ayurvedic series. It'll be focusing on Ayurvedic practices for healthy skin and hair. January 16th is the TCM, or Traditional Chinese Medicine Diagnostics. It's a series of 3 classes, I believe. On January 18th and 19th is Western Herbal 101, which is the start for the Western Herb program. But it's also what everybody's supposed to know. It's what your grandmama used to know, but we all forgot and didn't pass it on. For herbalists in any realm, it's really important. Like, even if you're doing an energetic system or whatever, like, we need to know some basic anatomy, physiology, pathology. And so we have a monthly class on anatomy for the herbalists that's looking at kind of the gross anatomy and some basic good stuff. So I think all of us, like, if your last science class was in high school, you probably need to, if you're trying to, as you're dealing with your own medical issues or navigating the medical system, like, it's just good. Um, and Ruthie's teaching the mushroom medicine series. She's got a class on January 24th on a mushroom that I forget the name of. Business of Herbalism is a series that's going to be spread out, I think, every month, kind of helping people get their business off the ground and kind of like uh, making each other responsible for it all. That's January 30th. And then make sure you put on your calendar May 3rd, Herb Day. That one's worth flying in for all you folks who are other cool places. Um, and also, if you're like, no, your school's dumb. No, my school's awesome. We've also got the West Coast chapter or the Tampa Bay chapter of the American Herbalist Guild. It's a great way to just put your toes in the water and find other like-minded folks in the realm. We're talking a lot of vitamin and minerals tonight. I Whatever the first weekend is in January is my senior Chinese class. It's their vitamin mineral class, but that is open for everybody. So if you're like, either you want to brush up on it or just learn a little bit more about nutrition, it's a really good primer for basics of utilizing supplementation, food sources of certain nutrients, and so forth. So it may not be listed. Just email the school and I will tell Trisha to make that available for everybody. So there's always a few of the weekend intensives that we make available for all anybody, no matter what your experience level is. All right, I think I beat leaky gut to death. I don't know. Literally, that's a 2-year program just on leaky gut stuff. And I would say it is when we're talking about food. If your gut ain't right, then you could eat the most expensive, best, most perfect food in the world. You're not getting your benefits out of it. So really, so often when we're working with clients, um, food, sleep, water, kind of the foundation of everybody's health and wellness. And throw some exercise in there, you'll live forever. All right, let's see. Bizarre question. Found a book on uh, Taoist stone medicine. Oh yeah. I can't think of the dude's name. Uh, yeah, it is a really cool book actually. Um, the school's actually in Asheville area. The guy who wrote the book, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't think of the guy's name, who wrote it. Really interesting 77th generation Taoist priest, blah, 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 blah. And he, not all the crystals have a tradition in Chinese medicine, but like we were talking at the beginning of all of this, that we like to use bugs for medicine, right? And so cicada moltings and centipedes and things like that. So we also use rocks. Uh, there's probably 2 dozen rocks that we. Oh, Jeffrey Ewan. Yes, thanks. That's the guy. Um, uh, we have traditionally in our Medica book for Chinese medicine, we've probably got maybe 2 dozen rocks that are listed in there. Many of them are toxic. So it's like lead oxide. We don't use that much anymore. Mercury in its raw form. Yeah, probably not some. We gave it to all the rulers to make them live forever or to off them. One of the two. We made them stupid. Um, but there are other ones like selenite that we use internally and externally for burns and excess heat. And I've used that on a number of occasions. Talc, no, lepidolite's not. part of our medica. I can't think of all of them. There's a bunch of weirdo ones, some of which I've never even heard of outside of Chinese medicine. They're not at the local crystal shop. But Jeffrey Ewan's gone through and looked at the medicinal benefits from a spiritual standpoint based on, and it's really funny. I know my crystals okay. I'm rusty because just I don't play with them often enough. I got my dozen crystals I like. Um, but the five element correspondences, and you could probably do something very similar to the Ayurvedic chakras and the color associations that we have with each one of those, in order to understand some of the functionality, like how would that affect the body. And I haven't done it in a while. I need to torture my new students or my acupuncture interns because like they've been with me now for I think they've been here a year. I think so. Yeah, who knows? Um, and so at some point I'm like, oh, I'm running out of things to teach these little buggers for the acupuncture interns, and they're I own them once a week for those couple of hours in clinic, just trying to challenge them a little bit. So they haven't gotten all my learning. Um, and so I really try to emphasize the importance of those five element correspondences for them. And so you can do some weird stuff like we say red is for the heart, and green is the liver, yellow is for the digestion, for the spleen, white is for the lung, black is for the kidneys. And so and we can look at all the correspondences of the if kidney is water and heart is fire, the connection between those of how they balance each other out and communicate with each other. And one feed, the liver, we say the wood element feeds the fire element, and so forth. And so we can take a green crystal that is thought to be stimulating and put it in your hand or on an acupuncture point and watch the pulse change for better or worse, depending on whether we chose our energetic diagnostic is correct. And so we can even like if somebody had a really hot liver and it was causing hypertension and red face and all that, and we take a red stone and we put that on the liver points, it will actually make their pulse go crazy, can even cause anxiety and things like that. And so crystals are weird, and pulse is amazing when you start to learn pulse diagnosis, how dramatically it can change by placing the right or wrong crystal, ideally on acupuncture points. And I would say the in Ayurvedic medicine, everybody is like, yay, chakra points. Everybody knows those. Those are also acupuncture points. They're some of our primary acupuncture points. But everybody forgets there's way more than just chakra points. There's marma points, which are a part of Ayurvedic medicine. Most of those correspond almost exactly to the Chinese acupuncture points as we go through all of those. So it's really some cool stuff up there. Um, Somebody had it. Oh, mushroom. I was like, I know there was another question in there. Actually, in pickles, you had mentioned the Genema sylvestre. We kind of talked about like eating those warm cooked foods would probably get you to where you needed to be with that. But I believe I believe you were talking about Genema sylvestre was an herb you were using, and it's a really fascinating herb. I don't think of it so much as a weight loss herb, although it can have that role. This is an Ayurvedic herb that is, it's always hard to find my chat here. Its Ayurvedic or Sanskrit name is Gumar. I just think it's a cool name to say Gumar. I don't know why. It's like translates destroyer of sugar. So Gumar, the destroyer of sugar. I just see this person with like battle axes coming at the sugar cane or something. Um, so um, this herb does seem to have some effect on the islets of Langerhans, the specialized cells in the pancreas that secrete insulin, and my other favorite word, glucagon, that seems to go with Gumar. I think they fight each other or something. Um, and glucagon actually is what makes you want more sugar, so helps you utilize it. Yes. So the helps to stimulate that, but the really cool part, like there's a million herbs that do good stuff for the pancreas and insulin resistance and blah 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 blah, blah. And there's good research out there on the Genemal sylvestre. Um, but the really cool part is it will make sugar not taste good. And I use this, I won't say a lot, but I do use this. I find it works best as a tea, as an infusion, rather than pills or extracts and things like that, because that tea touching your taste buds, I think, is important. It really enhances the action. It doesn't taste particularly good itself, it's mildly bitter. But for about 30 minutes, everybody, some people longer, some people shorter, if you eat something yummy, sweet, it won't taste right. Well, it doesn't taste like dog poo or anything. It just like it's not enjoyable. And so I don't use this without permission with my clients because like if their only joy in the world is a piece of milk chocolate at the end of the day, it's like their life sucks, blah blah blah. This is the only thing that keeps me present. Like, why take that away from them? You know, and so other people like I generally eat pretty healthy. My breakfasts are usually healthy. My snacks during the day are usually healthy. Lunch is pretty good. Even dinner, is generally a healthy thing. Late night snacks, not so much. You put crap in the house, I will eat crap. I'm gonna. I'm as bad as anybody in town, and so I may not be drinking soda or anything like that, but if there's something sweet and yummy, if there's ice cream in the house, if there's chips in the house, I will eat them. So I try not to put them in the house. So other people, they have a particular time, like, and that's a very common time for folks to struggle. It's late night, you're sitting there watching TV, you're unwinding, you just, this mindless stuffing things in your pie hole. And so with permission, part of that process is it tastes good. Like, I'm sorry, apple pie is yummy. And so if you have an apple pie issue where you have like a sugar addiction, it is a very addictive drug, substance, taking away the taste pleasure part of it can help people break those habits. And so what I say is like you don't have to drink it all day long. You just need to drink it a little bit before when you're like your ability to resist the yummy stuff is reduced. And if you're like, oh my God, it's too disgusting to drink, well, then, get it as a capsule. It still works a little bit, still has benefits for blood sugars. Um, and my favorite question, every time I tell somebody, like somebody's struggling with blood sugar or weight, eating disorders, whatever, I was like, I ask permission. I was like, I got this herb. This is what it does. I won't put it in without your permission. And they're like, and I always say, it's like, the herb itself doesn't taste good. And so the first thing everybody says is like, well, can I add sugar to it? And I'm like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose now, doesn't it? So I'm kind of an ass when it comes to those things. So really good herb, and absolutely nothing wrong, safe long term. Um, and if it's helping you achieve those goals, and there's interesting research out there, but I really just use it as a way to negate the behavior associated with a particular time where our defenses are down. Oh, something I didn't mention at the front or our 7 o'clock little break there. If anybody has to cut and run, they miss the like, oh, I want to see what else, but I got to go do stuff. This will be archived on the YouTube page for Tradition School of Herbal Studies, as well as the last however many years I've been doing this. So you'll find a bunch of these, as well as lots of other short videos. I will say I went out to Boyd Hill yesterday, I guess, and hiked about. I had not been to Boyd Hill since the hurricanes. I will just say that the park rangers there did a phenomenal job. They did a great job clearing the paths. Certainly, lots of downed trees, and it's an interesting thing. I'm not going to do this in my yard, but there in a natural environment like Boyd Hill Nature Park, leaving trees down is actually a good thing. Those become a food source for bugs, which are a food source for birds, which is a place for all kinds of critters to set up nests and so forth. And so it looks like outside of those where they're hazardous to people or we're impeding on pathways and so forth, that it looks like they're going to leave all the snags and the downed trees appropriately out there, and also reminds us to take care of our environment because boy, that hurricanes sucked. Um, it's been an interesting thing. I know we have more people from Florida than anything else, and I've been lamenting that the water came into my yard with Helene, and so I have a creek behind my house that is tidal, so there's salt water in that. Um, and it didn't come into my house, hallelujah, but it did come through the entire yard, went out into the street, went through into the driveway in the front yard, and it killed a lot of my. I had some pretty rare, some really cool plants here, and it killed off most of them. Um, and a lot of the interesting trees I had here were killed. So I was out there with the chainsaw today, like basically leveling my yard. Um, but it removed a lot of stuff, but also I just noticed like the amaranth is all growing out there. Pigweed for folks who don't like amaranth, which is a great protein source and really good vegetable, high in fiber, both the seeds and the leaves. A few of my other things that were some of the Mexican ones, like the sweet Aztec, survived. The Guayusa survived. The gumbo limbo trees, which are native, survived. And so the resilience of some of the plants, and there's a bunch of trees I'm like leaving, a few bushes I'm leaving to see if they recover. Um, but in the same way, a forest fire is horrid, but it does clear off the debris, and a lot of plants have adapted that they need a fire in order to sprout the seeds or to release their seeds and so forth. And so, although the storm was horrid and life changing, from an environmental standpoint, it did change the landscape, and that change in the landscape will create a completely different biome that is going to change and adapt. So there's some level of like, although I'm picking up all the debris and cutting some of the trees, and I got my fire pit back, yay. I'm also kind of like, as I'm walking through and I'm watching the amaranth and the pepper grass and a few of the other plants start to pop up, I'm like, and there's some level of like, let's just see what happens with all of this, and see what change in the environment starts to dominate and process through that whole process. So we shall see. Still going to get some of those trees out of my way. I'll leave that to Boyd Hill to do all that cool stuff. The reason I'm saying that was I did do about 5 short, little 3 to 5 minute talks about some specific plants that I will be uploading to launch like once a week on the YouTube channel. So for those of you who are trying to learn some of our native plants or learning the use of some of our Caribbean stuff, I don't know. It's every once in a while I get some folks from Bahamas where I grew up, but every once in a while I get some folks from some of the other island countries to jump in here. So a lot of those, there's the Cersei. I did not see amaranth out there. Oh, I talked about goldenrod. That one's everywhere. Choose a continent. There's goldenrod there. So I don't think had done a video on goldenrod before. So just kind of looking and seeing what else is out there. I may do another set of those this weekend. Also, in case anybody missed it, I did like an hour and a half Facebook Live thingy, and wandered around and just babbled on, kind of like tonight. And I am. Oh, mushroom coffee. I knew there was like one more question. I'm going to talk about the mushroom coffee, and then I am going to cut it short, I think, unless there's any other brilliant questions. Um, just because I actually need to answer this phone call because they never call twice. So, um, the mushroom coffees, I'm actually a fan. Um, I'm sure there's some better than others. Unfortunately, I don't buy it. I like my coffee. Shauna, and I am embarrassed. I always forget the name of her company. But if anybody wants, she's a graduate of the program. It's a mix of adaptogens and mushrooms that she put together because so many people who are taking coffee, not just because it's a ritual of this wonderful bitter drink, but they're like, I need my go juice, and they know it's it's causing fibrocystic breasts, it's causing irritability, stomach upset, things like that. And so they're like, I know I need to stop this. It's really stressing me out. They're not getting the kick off of it they used to. It's causing insomnia issues. Um, and so that stimulation of the adrenals, the inflammation of the system. So the mushrooms are great, and some of those are adaptogens. But because Jana was an herbalist, not somebody just trying to make a buck, although I think she's doing good with it, she put it together not just as a substitute, but to try to repair some of the damage that was caused by that long-term use of caffeine, plus some of the mushrooms in that dual role of helping the immune system and so forth, but really kind of energetically balanced it. And it tastes really good. Like whenever I find her out at an event, she's always got a free sample out there, and it's funny because I'm usually using coffee when I'm out there, and I feel like that alertness, focus, eyes open from hers that I've tried a few of the mushroom coffees, and I was like, oh, they're fine. I think mushrooms are generically good for you. Um, I've not looked into the quality control of a lot of those mushroom companies yet. Uh, I personally, I'm a fan of fruiting body, not mycelium, and I love Stamets. I think he's a brilliant man. His books are great. It really brought mushrooms into the forefront for research. His research is brilliant. There's no history or tradition of using the mycelium. And a lot of the supplements that are using mycelium, you can't just isolate those threads. They're in there with a lot of just junk filler that they grow the mycelium in. So fruiting body is my preference on all of those. Um, and just kind of looking at your quality control with those mushrooms. And if you want to know Jana's, somebody put the name in there because I can't remember it. Shoot me an email, and I'll make sure that I send you a link to her website. It's like, I'm so embarrassed I can't think of the name of it. God, why isn't she on the chat? Um, for any of you, I know I got a bunch of students, some of you local. Remember the first and third Friday at the Sunshine Center, we've got a free acupuncture, community style acupuncture. I always need people to assist with that. Just with paperwork, directing people, but love a wonderful way to get practice doing ear seeds and magnets, but also seeing tongues and pulses, just kind of seeing the speed acupuncture. Depending on who's there, we use different styles. Like I do a lot of channel theory and very normal basic acupuncture points. Matt uses master tongue, where he does a lot of things on the hand and the face and the head. And I don't know what Martina did. She's only been there a couple times, and I was like, we were too busy for me to actually pay attention to the way she did it. So it's always fun to see what different approaches and reasoning why people do stuff. All right, I am going to cut it short a little bit, so I do apologize. I hope you all have a wonderful start to the new year, that you think of ways to be healthy and happy as you start the new year, and explore your education of nature. A part of that might be herb stuff, but I would say spend time in nature. Make that your goal in the new year, and that will make you healthier. That will reduce your stress level. That will increase your exercise. It will improve your vitamin D levels if you do it during the daytime. And ultimately, that time in nature allows you to focus in on those things that are important, to escape the internet, uh, except for Fridays at the end of the month. Uh, but spend time in nature, hug a tree, touch a plant, learn what grows in your neighborhood, and have a great new year. Bye. Let's see. Oh, there's the end video thing.